Good morning, everyone. I got a I put up a post yesterday or a video post on YouTube. And Brian left a comment. He's asking me about can't law enforcement track you through your IP address and smartphone? Yes, 100%. There are maybe not a lot, but there's a few gringos I know who, for that very reason, they don't really have smartphones. They have maybe one smartphone that they don't really use. There's no real way I know of. Again, I want to say this. I'm not a specialist in tracking how law enforcement tracks you, but I agree, Brian. They can. What I will say is, unless you're really wanted for something, or unless the U.S. puts a lot of pressure on people down here, no one's going to do that. But I don't know if you or anyone else has heard of radiation off of phones or things of that nature. Anyways, the reason I bring it up is because people claim that their phones are not healthy, and also they claim if you take out the battery of your phone, they can't use triangulation to get your IP address. From my limited understanding of this, and from talking to people I know who are either in the law enforcement or other things, I don't really want to say, they actually can. They actually can triangulate, at least for most modern new iPhones and smartphones. Maybe not a really old one. Maybe the really, really old ones, you can take out the batteries. Now, again, some people claim it, and I'm not really a specialist. I don't really know or have proof of, but some people claim you can put your laptops and your phones inside a microwave, and that's enough to maybe have them not be able to trace it. I'm reluctant to believe that. If you or anyone else has heard anything about that, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. But if you have your phone on and the battery in, it's very, very easy to track you. Google and there's a whole bunch of other things can track you right to your door, even in Latin America. Now, because things aren't as developed in some Central American countries, maybe they'd be a block away, but they'd be very close to wherever you lived. And if you're really, really wanted by someone, they would just put some software on your phone and track you right to your door, as we saw with the Khashoggi or Khashoggi thing. The Israelis have, an Israeli company has developed software that can very easily do that. So the only real way you can get around that, if you're really worried about your privacy, is not to have any kind of electronics and then shut off your internet at night. Some people think that works. I'm not really sure about that, but like if you have a router, you'd have to turn it off every night and not use it, and only use it when you use it. Some people, what they do, if they're really, really worried about their privacy, they'll rent like a really, really super cheap $50 apartment, or they'll rent a really cheap office for $200 a month, and then they'll just get all their wire, their internet and all their electronic goodies. They'll store them in the office. They don't take them home at night, and they just use their stuff there. Like me, I'm a trader. If I were really worried, I would just get an office and trade, keep all my electronics there, and not really travel with them. If you're really worried about getting followed, you cannot. I repeat, you cannot travel with your electronics on. But even if they're off, and I'm told almost most new phones you can't really take the battery out anyways. But I am told even if you turn your phone off, they can very, very easily track you if that's what they want to do. But if you really need super duper deluxe, you really need to stay off the radar. You have to do everything with your dumb phone. And when I mean off the radar, I mean like you want to set up certain kinds of banking, corporate banking. You basically have to do it by mail, which people don't really do anymore, and never use internet and or call them on a dumb phone. In fact, way back in the Stone Age, a lot of the Swiss banks they wouldn't accept a phone call from the U.S. You'd have to go up to Canada. You couldn't even handle your account that way, and they would encourage you to use a dumb phone even when you're in Canada if you're really worried about your privacy. But anyways, I was going to mention one more thing. But like, say you were going to buy some people. What people do is they'll buy some offshore banking, or they'll buy some offshore corporate entities online, and they'll pay with their credit card. Even if you didn't pay with your credit card, just having your IP address from your computer, anyone can see that's really you. Let's just pretend you didn't have to show any ID to open up the accounts. They just know from your IP address. So if you're really, really slick and you wanted privacy, you would have a third cousin twice removed, maybe one of your cousins from Canada or Mexico or wherever, maybe the Philippines. They would use their credit card. They would fund all that stuff on a laptop they specifically bought for that purpose, and then fund it that way. And then you would fund in cash or other ways I don't really want to talk about here. And then you would get the laptop with all the banking information, the corporate information, and then you would manage it. That way they have their IP address they use at the time and that computer. And you would never ever want to associate any of your social media, not even one time or anything on that said computer. It'd only be used for banking and trading or whatever. That's how you'd have to do it if you want a certain kind of privacy. Again, if you're wanted by alphabet agencies, then that even may not work. I mean, I'm sure they can figure that out, but because most people will mix up their email address, their social media accounts, and they'll figure out that way. But that's what sometimes I'm getting at, but I don't really want to say too much about. You'd have to do it that way. But like if you have a dumb phone and you're walking into your lawyer's office in a third world country or Philippines or whatever, and you have a special computer set up for everything that's done with said account, and you never do anything electronically with your own banking with that account in the U.S. in that name, but there's a special way a lawyer will tell you how to deposit money in the account, so it's a lot more private. But again, if you're wanted by the alphabet agencies, eventually they'd figure it out. But if you're just an average person, it would just be dumb luck that they'd figure that out. Most people aren't really wanted, so you don't really have to worry about. But again, if you want to totally live under the radar, you need to set up certain accounts a certain way, even if they're not corporate. And then never ever use a computer with those accounts, or if you did, you'd want to use a special computer that person specifically bought with their IP address. And then you wouldn't want to use any IP address that's in your name. You'd have to, oh man, it can get complicated, but like you can rent an apartment, everything, get your banking all set up through a nominee, and then you're safe then, as long as you don't mix up your own social media, your own email addresses from your previous life, so to speak. That's how you would do that. But as far as tracking, there's no known way that I know of that's perfect. I do know people who have software like military grade software that's, I don't want to say impossible to crack, but you can get that. You can even get that free sometimes if you know the right people. But the trouble is, if you go through a first world country and they see that military grade software on your computer, they will know it, and they will be asking a lot of hard questions, and you will be detained. So if you were to do that, you would not want to be traveling with a phone or a computer. It would most likely be a laptop, the kind of software I'm talking about. So either that, or you just hope to get lucky, because New Zealand and a lot of other countries are now planning on, you'll have to give them all your ID and your passwords to your laptop and search it, and they'll look at it. And when they see military grade encryption on your computer, your ass could be seriously grasped. Again, I know it's out there. You may or may not know what I'm talking about, but there is that. But like if you were going through a first world country and they saw that, they will be asking you some really hard questions. And if you don't have appropriate answers, you will be detained. And you may need to call a lawyer. Anyways, Brian, thanks for your comment. That's the best I can do. Again, as far as I know, I'm not a specialist. They can track your phone, they can track your laptop, and as long as you're not no one important and you haven't pissed anyone off, it's not really a big deal. But for people who really need to go off radar, they need to use either cash, which is harder and harder to do, and dumb phones. But again, like I said, if you get a nominee and you set everything up a certain way, and you never mix the two between your old life and your new life, it will be difficult if you're just a nobody. I hate to use that term, but if you're no one important. So anyways, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you think, and if anyone has a solution to what Brian's saying, maybe leave a comment or a link to an article or something that people can check out. Thank you.